Hello, hello, and welcome to everyone. I can't believe we actually have a live audience today. I wasn't pretending. Welcome. My name is Harriet MacMasters-Green, and today joining me for a really cozy, lovely coffee with is the wonder that is Toni Short. Now, I'm thrilled that you're all here. And before we even begin, just have a little think, maybe if anything comes up during the chat that you might like to ask Toni at the end. She'd be really happy to answer your question, and you might even be offered one of her
goodies.
Yes, lovely goodies that she's brought along with her. Toni's here. Actually, you've flown from the USA to be with us here for the Rolling Film Festival. Your film was aired last night.
Yes.
And it is The Meeting Mr. Oster. It's a short film, which we're going to find out a little bit more about shortly. But what I'm keen to know, and what I think will really support people, is also your journey towards where you've got to today, and also Spirit Sister stories.
Amazing. Thank you. It's great to be here, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I think it's wild when you think about where you were and where you are now. And so it's really exciting to share this experience. I lived in London back in 1999 to 2006. And so to have, friends witnessing me and being here and to share this journey has been really incredible. Yesterday, I'm so still buzzing about the reaction and winning the award.
Yes.
We got honorable mention, which was really, that means so much in a sense of, even just the honor and respect I have for the people that were part of the project and how they supported me to bring my dream alive, was really amazing. So then to witness the audience reactions and how people talked about the impact on them. I had, numerous conversations with women in the bathroom and tears and hugs. And I think there's such a universal story to maybe just having someone show you a different perspective to then see how you can see your own life from a different perspective and then the changes that you can make. And, maybe that's a little motto that, just start somewhere in relation to what you love and following it and how that can, roll into something. I literally would never have imagined that I'd be making a film, let alone sitting here to talk about it in London. It's really an honor.
I just think what's really lovely is that what you've brought into the film is also so much about what's happened to you and that almost that rising from the ashes to become the woman that you are today.
Oh, thank you.
And that journey that you've been on. And I feel like already that you hold space for a lot of women who perhaps are going on their own journey and their own transformation.
Yes.
If you can tell us just a little bit about that transformation for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess I'll go back a little bit. I'm Australian. I moved to London when I was 22. I worked for the BBC in events. Then I went to DC and did more events. And then I went to New York and did more events. And, around about 2015, I got involved in a relationship with what I now know was a narcissistic romance scam with a gentleman that seemed to have maybe 5 other people going in his life at the same time. And that experience was abusive from a, emotional, spiritual, financial point of view. And really, it sort of brought me to my knees in the best way, because I think, maybe the universe sends you signs and we don't listen because of many reasons. And the signs got really loud and really big. And then eventually I had no choice but to listen. That moment when I sort of, I would say I, had a traditional breakdown of some sort, I heard a voice and it said, put up these pieces of paper on the wall and fill it with all the things that you love. And I didn't know if I know what that even meant then, but they're breadcrumbs that just started appearing bit by bit. It was sort of morning, noon, and night. So it was like, morning was bike riding, lunchtime was sitting in the park eating sandwiches with my teddy. Afternoon was I went to trapeze. I did improv, and going to improv, it wasn't normal improv, it was musical improv. Remembering those moments where I'm like, what am I doing? And just pushing through, joining up, taking those classes, writing, painting, and even just some personal commitments. I'm going to paint every day, no matter what it was. I'm going to, do it. And it started with finding a a palette of 3 colors and 1 brush and some shitty paper from 99-cent store making, watercolors. And then all of a sudden I bought more things and just played around and, practiced this with the left hand, just all of these sort of creative and alternative, medicine exploration to kind of get myself back together. And as I sort of started going through that process, I was also learning about the universe. And, it's funny when you say you want to buy a car and all of a sudden you start to see the car that you see all the time. So I, started to learn what the universe meant. And sure, this concept of the universe and manifestation has been around forever, but it started to show up for me in different ways. And, I would see a sign for a singing teacher, and then the musical improv helped me learn about song structure. And so I started turning all these poems and things and all this heartache and, darkness into songs. And I also started sort of playing, if I started writing about, fun stuff and good stuff, would that end up happening to me? If you sing about God, will you get a better voice? I just experimented with all these sort of wild and crazy things. And, the singing lessons, she was like, well, what do you want to sing? And I was like, well, I have all these songs. And, the teacher was like, these are amazing. Let's sort of build. So I just started writing, singing, dancing, playing. And I met this woman that was a film script writer, and, other things were happening around me in terms of film. So I was like, well, I can't be that hard to write a film. So I sat down one weekend and I wrote Spirit Sister Stories, which was the story about us and these other women and what happened. And I loved it, but there was this point with this woman when we were sort of trying to almost make new versions of the film of like, what other things can we say he did, that we looked at each other and said, why are we telling the stories about this guy? Why don't we tell stories about women and what we did or have done or could do to transform our lives using creativity and, the artistic sort of, whether it's exploration or application, to heal or to tell the stories differently. And that's really, where Spirit Sister Stories started. And, going from there, that then turned into during COVID, a 3-week camp for women. Again, sort of almost the camp that I created for myself. I then made it for other women during COVID online. We had classes and, exercises and things. And then from there, I was like, well, I need to do this for kids so I can teach them to learn about themselves so that they end up, like a 40-year-old getting stuck with a loser dude. So, it just sort of evolved. And from there, I think the scripts and the stories that I wrote also began to evolve as I learned more. And as I was also maybe got more narrative distance, obviously, too, to be able to tell the story. Because at first it was so raw, and after a while I could, speak about it in a different way. So,
I mean, I think what I certainly glean from what you're saying as well, and I'm sure everyone can here too, that it's that sense also of really empowering yourself with creativity. You don't have to be wonderful or amazing or highly imaginative or know so much about something to help it feed into perhaps other areas of your life.
Absolutely.
Being able to paint that picture, write down those words, connect, go to nature, connect with the horses, which is another thing we'll discuss in a moment. I think all these outlets are only going to feed into one's passion, because sometimes when we have a real focus and a real passion, we only want to do that.
Yes.
And then suddenly we feel like there's just a black hole around this, that we can't focus on anything else. Whereas what we don't realize is that maybe you too can just let that light filter through. Absolutely. And then just allow you to be able to focus on something much more than that, right?
Absolutely. And I think, it did sort of fold into other parts of my life as well. I was, working in events and production, and I wanted to be a nicer boss, a kinder boss, someone that, you look at events and, even film, everyone says it has to be stressful. It's always a drama. And I was like, why? It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. So part of, creating a company and a team and a life process where those things didn't have to be nasty and that was freeing, and I could see it coming into that. And, it's amazing how it sort of just filtered into everything.
So going back to the festival, and obviously why you're here, and like if someone is struggling or thinking or trying to create a project, doesn't really know how to get it off the ground, is feeling the doubt, how do you even get started in that?
Yes. I will say again, start somewhere. And then often people were like, well, what does that mean? And how do I do it? You know, for me, I learned about the artist's way. You know, things start to fall, I think, in front of you. And I learned about the artist's way and the morning pages.
Yeah.
So, you know, the first was like, this is dumb. What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And then eventually, you know, something kind of moved. And, you know, even in something as simple as having the courage, which really was coming from, you know, the corporate world for all those years, and then having my own company, having the courage to go at lunchtime or in the morning and sit out and read a book when the sun was shining.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden someone sits next to you and that person's in this and this and this, and then you're like, shit, now we have a job. You know, there was so many ways that starting somewhere led, and following what you love. And I think maybe even giving yourself permission to learn what you love, and to follow that, and to sort of investigate and really find what it is that lights you up, because that was what drove me from place to place and person to person, and then often delivered what I needed that I, you know, wasn't even aware of at the time.
So for someone listening as well and watching, when you said, there was a moment there where you said, I heard a voice and it came through me to then start to write down what I wanted, you know, what I really wanted. You know, you go from this place of darkness, despair, not knowing, hopelessness, maybe even, to suddenly turning that on its head and finding hope. Like, how making that transition?
I think, tell us, you know, it's amazing. I think it happens naturally. And I think we have that inside of us, and I think our bodies and our souls and our minds and our hearts know that. So maybe part of the practice for me was leaning into the trust and the love of what I do. And then for there, it almost didn't become a decision. You know, it became a natural thing, and it was part of my daily life. And so I really go back to, you know, if you love reading and you're not sure what to do and you want to be a writer, read lots of books. If you want to try painting, and if anything, just try little things that are different or something that you've never tried before. And, you know, it's amazing how that then gives you some little sense of appreciation for yourself. And I think that's then, it's almost like if we feed our own cup, which is so obvious, if we fill our own cup, it will, you know, respond and give us back all that we need.
And also the spending the time in nature, the spending the time with animals. Tell us a little bit about this, about the horses.
I think I had horses when I was younger, and, you know, looking back, I now realize they came into my life when I needed them, and I didn't, you know that. And the lessons, you know, I would say I had a filthy temper when I was a kid. I had a lot of things to work with. And I took a lot of that out on my first horse. I was so mad at her. She wouldn't go over the jumps. That was because of me. So then I would just get mad at her, and then I would get mad at myself. So there was this journey that I was on. And so that learning, or that sort of example, didn't show up until later. And in my life, I'm like, oh, I guess now I can see why that came. And I think, you know, I live in New York City, and it's a busy city, but there's a lot of little pockets of green space, especially where I am. And, you know, that again was just having the courage to, like, every morning from 9 to 10, I'm going to go sit downstairs under the trees. And, you know, all of a sudden, again, things would sort of shift. And I think there's something out there that's ready to help you go where you want to go, if you actually say, this is what I want to do, or I like this, and then it, you know, gives you more. It's sort of,
and maybe give yourself the opportunity, like you say, to go on that walk, to go even on that physical journey, and let that come through you. You know, life tries to teach it. We're always rushing. We don't really want to be still. A lot of people, certainly meditation or sitting down quietly with oneself, doesn't appeal to a lot of people. But perhaps, you know, to find that channel and to give yourself that peace, and to hear, you'll hear more, you know.
Almost the quieter I got with myself, you know, which a lot of people talk about, and it's very obvious, but it, you know, in practical senses, like, what does that even mean? And I just did little things, you know, starting a business. I really used to, like, freak out that if I wasn't at my desk at 9 a.m. every morning, my clients would know, and I'd get in trouble, or I would never get jobs if I wasn't sitting there. And then I was like, this is dumb. I don't want to be sitting at my desk waiting. So I would, you know, go out and do things, and even, you know, exercising, even, you know, creating space to have a lunch break. I feel like I had 20 years of corporate life, and I never had a lunch break. You know, it was sort of eating at your desk with one hand. And, you know, that took a lot of courage to break those patterns, to then create the lifestyle and the flow that I wanted to have. And, looking back, I'm not sure I really knew what was happening at the time, but I think it unfolds in a way that you almost don't have to think about how and what's going to happen, just one step at a time. And then,
Which leads me really, makes me think of this journey, the one step at a time.
Yeah.
One step when you're for meeting Mr. Oscar. And I really have that sense of that journey and that path, and not know which way do you take. Do you just keep walking when you don't see the destination?
Yes.
That vibe. Take us through the sensation of this film.
Meeting Mr. Oscar, thank you. Meeting Mr. Oscar started, I went to Chile during COVID, and I just had to get out. And so I went traveling, and I came across this random group of women, and it was a sort of retreat with horses and things. So I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And as we went there, I didn't even know any of these people, all Spanish speaking. And I was just sitting in the back of the car, just thinking, what am I doing? And one of the partners of the women that was there, he left and went on a drive to his next stop. And as he was driving, he bumped into this eccentric older man on the side of the road that every day walked 2 hours to work, and he picked him up, and he explained that he felt like he met this man that had all the answers to everything in the world, but he didn't ask him any questions. He sort of only drove him for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then when he got out, he was like, why didn't I ask him those questions? Fast forward 3 days later, he's driving back to pick us up, and he sees the old guy again, and he picks him up again. And he did ask a few questions, but then he had to drop him off. So it was sort of, didn't have the opportunity for everything. And when he told me this, I was just like squirting, just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to make a movie out of this. It just felt like such a visceral reaction in me. Then I came home, and I think it was Soho House in New York was having a short film festival. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to write another script. I've never done any of this. It was maybe like the third thing I've written. And I wrote it with a male lead, and more sort of deeper story about, his mum had died, and, he was driving, he found someone that maybe he got some comfort from. So I sort of tried to put a lot more in it. And going back another step, I had started, auditioning for films, doing acting classes again. I was just such a beginner's mind. I was turning up, not caring. And, maybe also all the production and BBC experience when I went to auditions and things, it wasn't that I didn't give any shit, excuse my French. It was more that like, it wasn't the end of the earth. I was just having fun and playing, so I would go in with an open mind. And I had auditioned for a role, something, didn't get it. And then about 3 or 4 months later, these girls that I auditioned with wrote back to me and said, actually, our friend is now looking for a lead in her film, and she thinks you might be it. Oh. And so I met her, and that's Jo, who became the production partner and colleague on this film. And Jo's from Korea, and her name is Jeong Won Lee. And so there were so many elements that came into the film. Her whole life she's gone through, no one would ever pronounce her name. And so that sort of became part of it. And she just looked at me and said, why don't we, make it? So we sort of shifted the script, and then the farm came, the truck came, the house came, and within 2 months it was, in the can, as they say, and, all these pieces had come together.
I think what's lovely is the trust. And I think really, truly, that this feels like a big thing on your journey.
Thank you.
Yes. That really, and courage.
Thank you.
Trust and courage.
Yes.
And on that note, we have the luxury of wonderful, wonderful people who come to join us.
Questions.
If anyone has anything to ask Toni, please do. Don't, whatever. Yes.
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 Do you have a sort of a hero or a mentor or someone you kind of look forward and when I want to be that person, or I would like, did you get someone, an Oscar character in your life that you met that gave you some wisdom?
Great question. I think the people that have inspired me just popped up. I think the randomness and the sort of more unknown, actually the bigger impact. And I, maybe after the breakdown, there was a chance of recreating myself. So it was sort of like I was being my own hero for the first time, but at the same time, then all these little characters would pop up and, help me sort of fill in the pieces or drive me to the next place. So that's was really fun sort of answering that call. Or then someone said, look at this film. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do that. And I would just make it up and follow things. And again, those breadcrumbs kept driving me. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
What is the story behind the fish in the film?
I love it. Ruby. Well, I have a teddy bear, and Teddy goes with me everywhere, and that was, maybe part of my sort of healing process. And I think when I mentioned to Jo how about a teddy bear, she looked at me and went, no. I was like, okay. And then a few days later, she came back and she went, goldfish. And I was like, okay. And then it sort of became a mixed, and a lot of the story, again, go back to her name, and even her culture and story came in. Audrey became a mix of all of the women that we had met. Audrey being my grandmother's name too, so there was a lot of family stuff.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, she's got to be really connected to this goldfish. So then, I was like, how are we going to transport her? So then the little kids' porta potty or whatever it was, the little baby seat. And then I was like, well, she's definitely like a DIY kind of lady because, she lives on a farm. So then we, strapped it in, and, that just sort of evolved. And we had a great time. We had 3 rubies during the feeding, through the filming. And, a funny story, there was one of the first AD was very connected to the rubies, and a little bit of emotional overfeeding because she felt sorry for them all the time. So we were always like, no more food for the fish because they were getting overfed. So, but they all went to great homes, and they've having a nice life.
Brilliant. Is there anything else, Toni, that you would like to add? How we might be able to contact you? Anything, if anyone would like to contact you?
Yes, thank you.
Follow you.
ToniShort.com and Toni_short in Instagram. I think I would say if you feel any, just reach out. Yeah. That's what I would say. There's no accidents how we all end up here in this world. And I think that there's always something about sharing your stories and the power of that, and how that helped me realize that not even everything was going to be okay, but I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, and I'm moving in the right direction. And there's such cliches, but there's a comfort in them. And then just one more connection with a person that has it, and it a little Tetris building block inside you comes back together, and then that sort of just builds and shines. So, yes.
And on that note,
Thank you.
I love that, and I still love Tetris. I still do.
Yes.
Thank you so much once again, everyone. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. Thank you for watching. It's been wonderful, and it's so special to have you all here live with us. I can't tell you. Thank you, Toni, so much. Thank you. Thank you.